I'm Jim Cunningham. I'm here today to talk about the Sacramento Capital Region Real Estate Market 2021. I'm here with John Yoffie and Mela Fratarcangeli, both of Keller Williams in the El Dorado Hills area. Very important, this is a disclaimer. I'm a lawyer. My lips are moving. Words are coming out of my mouth. This is not legal advice. Mela and John are going to be talking. This is not real estate advice. Okay, don't watch this and go do a bunch of stuff. Please hire the appropriate professionals. Again, this is just information only. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a great way to stay up to date on a lot of change that's going on in the world that affects your finances. So I'm the managing partner of Cunningham Legal. I'm a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law. I've been practicing trust and estate law for 25 years. I am a licensed, securities licensed and insurance licensed, and also a licensed real estate broker. I don't sell any of that stuff. I'm just kind of a diploma junkie or whatever you want to call it. Offices in the Capital Region, which is the Sacramento area, including Placer and El Dorado counties, Southern California, primarily in the Los Angeles market, and then the San Francisco Bay Area. So we have John Yoffie. John is with, founded the Yoffie Group in El Dorado Hills with his wife, Shannon. He's got over 30 years experience in media marketing, sales, and management, and is now doing real estate. His group is one of the top performing and fastest growing real estate teams in El Dorado Hills and the Sacramento markets. 50 transactions in 24 months. John, that's a lot of work. And prices range from $199,000 to $3.9 million. And Mela is a CEO and founder of Mela Fratarcangeli Real Estate Group, top producing real estate broker since 2003 with over 450 homes sold. Again, Mela, that's a ton of work. Prior to that, she was a successful corporate career in investments and was the owner of 2 fine art galleries in the Bay Area. So I will turn it over to you, John and Mela. Let's talk about what's going on in the market, in the real estate market in the Sacramento, Placer, and El Dorado County areas. So this is, we're just kind of looking at it as a group. When I'm looking here is in COVID, when COVID hit, sales plummeted.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It was, it just absolutely everything ground to a halt. You may recall, nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew what was going to be open, what was going to be closed. Nobody knew what COVID was. Nobody knew who was going to live, who was going to get sick, anything, right? We weren't going to talk to people. We couldn't go outside. I mean, it just ground to a halt. And that affected the housing industry as much as it affected anything else. Fortunately, for a lot of people who needed to move, who wanted to move, that was short-lived, and housing was quickly included in the financial services segment that was deemed critical service. And we were able to open back up slowly, following strict protocols as California Association of Realtors set for us. But when that happened, it was like a dam burst. The market changed completely. If you look at the chart in front of you and you look at the blue line, 2019, that would be a more typical trend line, where in the springtime we see our growth in sales. It starts going up, it flatlines kind of across the summer. About the time school starts this time of year, the market slows down. Fewer homes come on the market, fewer sales happen. It kind of tails off in the end of the year. Next year it cycles over again. Last year, totally different. It spiked when the market reopened in June, and it really never came back down. Sales have just continued to outstrip supply. So it's been an incredible market. And what's really interesting to me is that when this happens in most markets, we would say that, okay, Sacramento's booming, that's because somewhere else is suffering. This year, I can't find a market that isn't booming across the whole country. Everybody has experienced this in their markets. So something that's completely different from what we've seen in past housing booms.
So, yeah, go on, Mela.
Concurring with John, it has been across the board. It's been driven by a few things. It's been driven by the interest rates. It's been driven by people wanting to make lifestyle changes, living life on their terms after COVID, and doing whatever it takes to have that lifestyle that they want.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when my wife and I moved up to Northern California a little over 10 years ago, and people were like, why are you moving there? And I'm like, oh, it's just such a great area. We moved to El Dorado Hills. It's on the western slope of the Sierras. It's a beautiful place to live. It's kind of very similar in a sense to like the desert in Southern California. It's where people go to vacation and recreate from the Bay Area. They go to the Sierra foothills, they go to Tahoe. How much of that was people leaving the Bay Area and coming to this area, right? The Sacramento region.
The Bay Area exodus has been a driving force. But in addition to Bay Area, we've had people, quite a few people coming from Southern California. And then also what's probably driving it is people wanting to upgrade, downgrade. Prices finally exceeded where we had been at the last peak, and people were ready to move on. So, I don't know what John would say, but I'd say half of the people that purchased the listings that we've sold in the last year, and we've had 64 listings in the last year, were from the Bay Area or outside of the Sacramento region.
Interesting. About March of this year, I got a phone call from a reporter at the LA Times, and she was working on a story about California migration and people leaving the state, et cetera. And what she saw was actually people aren't leaving the state in the numbers that you would think based on what you're seeing in the media, but we are seeing what's called a great reshuffling. That's what they termed it, the great reshuffling. But one of the things that she noted was that El Dorado County in particular was one of two counties in the state that was growing even before COVID, that people were moving to El Dorado County. And so she wanted to know why, and I think Jim, you explained it pretty well, that the lifestyle in El Dorado County is spectacular. I think there's a spillover effect from that's happening in Sacramento and Placer and other areas where people have found, for years. I grew up in Northern California, moved away, came back, but Sacramento was a drive-through market on the way to Tahoe, right? No, we didn't stop in Sacramento. We stopped, before or after on the way to Tahoe, or we didn't stop at all. And even when we moved here, much like you, Jim, people asked us, we came from the Bay Area when we moved up in 2004. Sacramento, why are you guys moving to Sacramento? And we had to explain to them, the lifestyle in Sacramento is not what people think. And it's only improved and continues to improve the quality of life, the outdoor activities, but things that weren't here before, like entertainment, like restaurants, all of that is taking off. You combine that with affordability, and it's a boom town. And it makes a lot of sense for people who have been handcuffed in the Bay Area or elsewhere based on their jobs, who can now have more flexibility to be able to say, okay, let's go somewhere more affordable.
Yeah,
and Sacramento has been a beneficiary.
And a lot of people, working from home, they're like, wow, well, maybe I can just do this forever with my job. So they move, and then their employer's like, well, wait a minute. You need to come in 1 day a week, or 2 days a week. And you can do that if you're, you can drive that 120 miles to the Bay Area or the 100 miles or whatever it is. It's tough. It's not easy. But if you do it 1 day a week, you can do it. So there's a real benefit to living here. And, when we were getting ready for this, John, this is the average sales price. Okay. This is really an amazing number on how high this has gone. I mean, I look back to when we moved up to Northern California in 2009, I couldn't believe how cheap everything was. Of course, it was right after, this catastrophic downturn. I never would have thought prices would have been this high. I mean, any thoughts on where prices are? Prices
have gone through the roof. The average, across the valley, the average is up over 30%. And, it'll be interesting to see how that continues, because if you look at the chart, it shows that we saw a very slight dip in that average price from June to July. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time, and looking at, at what we've got here, that we've really seen a substantial decrease, right, in more than 2 years.
Yeah. And is that now this is the average of all homes sold. So one explanation could be that there are more homes under, 600,000 coming to market, which would bring that average sales price down. But it might also be a cooling of the market. I mean, has the market cooled? Is it hard to tell in August? I mean, we're in August of 2021. Has it cooled? Has it not? Or, I mean, is there enough data? Any thoughts on that?
I don't think we know yet, but I think if we're following typical seasonality, that we would expect it to start cooling about now in a normal year. I think the frenzy has slowed. There's still multiple offers. 70%, close to 70% of homes are seeing multiple offers, right? So there's still more demand than there is supply, but maybe you're seeing 2 or 3 offers where you might have seen 8 or 10 6 months ago, right? But the other thing, speaking to the price, and I was surprised to see the drop, and part of the reason I was surprised to see the drop is in the last few years, we've sold a handful of really expensive homes that were, kind of groundbreaking, highest priced home in El Dorado Hills that had ever sold. And then another one down on the river in Sacramento that was very high priced. And they were kind of one of one at the time. And just in the short period of time, we're starting to see a consistent stream of listings and sales over $3 million in Sacramento, which didn't exist before. I mean, if it existed before, it was, Eddie Murphy's house that sold in Granite Bay, however many years ago that was, right? They were one of a kind. But now it seems like there's a market for these higher priced homes. And I think that's driving some of the average up, and it's pulling the homes below them up with it.
Okay. Let's look at active listings. So this is kind of a leading indicator of sales, right? So the more listings you have, the logic is the more sales. And what we're seeing is this march of fewer and fewer listings year over year, except they're starting to go, the number of listings are starting to go back up. Is this an indication of a cooling real estate economy or not?
I mean, I think you can't look at just 1 month. I think you have to definitely look at the trend. And part of that trend is, if you look back historically, we typically see the greatest number of homes on the market in that May, June timeframe, and then it will start to dip as we get into July, as the summer gets hot. I think one of the things that I personally felt was that when they were lifting the ban in June and going back to normal, that there would be people that had been sitting on the sidelines, watching, waiting, and okay, now we're back to normal. I feel comfortable in putting my home on the market. I think there's not enough data at this point in time to tell. But that being said, we have 2,200 homes on the market when typically, we'll have substantially more than that. I mean, 2020 was an anomaly year, but we're still way below normal.
And this is Sacramento, Placer, and El Dorado counties. If I'm not mistaken, the population of that is about 2 million, or is that too high? Or is that including YOLO?
It's about 2.5 million.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought it was a little higher.
Yeah, so in the whole metro, it's about 2.5 million.
2,400 listings for 2.5 million people. That's nothing. I mean, really,
it's nothing.
It's not enough supply. So it's still a seller's market, right? Or you still get the feeling that it's the definition of a seller's market, right, is less than 6 months of, or less than 6 months of inventory. So,
and we have less than 1 month of inventory.
Yeah, no, it's still very much a seller's market.
And I think the other thing that we've witnessed, there's a little bit of FOMO going on, the fear of missing out, right? and are these prices inflated currently? Is there, something going on that might reverse a little bit over time? And no one knows. But if you've been considering selling, it's a great time to take advantage of the market. And I think some people are taking advantage of a seller's market, and they should if they're ready to sell.
And then we've got here, this is an interesting one. Now, again, this is the average active price. So this could be a reflection of lower priced properties coming onto the market. And in a prior webinar today, we in LA at least, it's the low end and the high end that's really moving. In the middle relative to the high and low end, it's the high and the low end that's moving a lot. I don't know if you're seeing that as much, or is it just, I mean, what are the properties that are really hot and moving? Are they in this sort of average price range, or are they below that or above it? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think in Sacramento Valley, you've got everything across the board, and you've got to look at kind of each micro market. I mean, across the valley, the one thing that we have seen is more home sales over $1 million. And John, I don't know if you know this number off the top of your head, but the percentage increase in $1 million sales has been something like 20%, I believe, over last year. So, and part of that is just the fact that values have gone up so much, but I think it's also speaks to that Bay Area contingent coming this way. They sell their 1,400 square foot house in the Bay Area for, $1.5 million, $2 million. And they come up here and for $1 million, they're buying a palace.
Right.
Yeah. I think that what we're seeing here is that there are more low price homes that are coming on the market. Whether those are investors selling, whether those are homes that are out of date and need work, and people are unloading them and taking advantage of the market to buy something else. I don't know specifically, because as Mela mentioned, there's so many different pockets that we have to look at each one and kind of get a different answer. If I look at just El Dorado Hills, I don't see the same trend, right? So the 3-county market is different than individual markets.
Yeah, in talking to you guys and other realtors in the El Dorado Hills area, that's El Dorado Hills is a place that is figuratively on fire, not literally, but it's still a hot market, right? El Dorado Hills, people want to live there.
Yeah, thank goodness it's not literally on fire. Yeah, and for all the reasons that you found it when you moved up, right? But what the other thing that we've seen in the last year is that where El Dorado Hills used to draw from Sacramento and the Bay Area, we are now seeing buyers in El Dorado Hills that are not only from all over the country, but from all over the world.
Wow.
And people who could afford to live anywhere they want, choosing El Dorado Hills, which to me is really interesting that folks are finding El Dorado Hills that didn't know about it before.
So ended sales, these are properties that are under contract. Obviously a massive dip when everything locked up with COVID. We didn't know what was going on. And then you just had this huge surge. I mean, you guys must have been really busy last summer.
We've been really busy for 18 months.
Yeah,
it's been much
nuts.
nonstop.
And pending, obviously, it's slightly forward-looking data, right? So the pending sales turn into closed sales next month, and we do see that it's slowed a little bit. Part of what's driving the dip, you would think would also be the lack of inventory, and not just the lack of inventory, but the lack of inventory that people may want to buy and live in. So there was a time, even in the last year, where folks wouldn't put their house on the market before they prepped it. I mean, and they were going to fix up the bathrooms, fix up the kitchen, fix up the yard. And now we're starting to see sellers that say, you know what, I'm just going to sell it as is. But there are still fewer buyers who are willing to buy a home that needs all the work. The sweat equity that buyers put in their homes maybe in the 90s and early 2000s, people aren't quite as interested in doing that unless it's quick.
Yeah, let me ask you, why is that? Is that just, is it younger people who have different values than their parents maybe, and they're like, I don't want to deal with fixing up a property? Is it a money issue? Has it gotten more expensive to fix up properties?
Over the near term, absolutely.
Yeah,
right?
I just think getting anything done by a contractor or somebody like a skilled laborer is just hard to find anyone to do anything.
trying to get a contractor on the phone and to come to your house is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to do a one-off project, really, really tough. But I think there also is the macro trends that you mentioned. And I think that, the younger generation has less desire in doing that work. So they have to hire it out. They don't do it themselves the way that some families did before. So they have to hire it out. And then, you've just made a purchase. And in Sacramento, we are seeing a lot of people who are stretching to make that first time buy, moved here because they could afford a house. And that may not leave them with a lot of money left over to fix up a home.
All right. So let me ask you guys a question. We can maybe do a little role play. Let's say I've got a house. It's behind the high school in El Dorado Hills and the grade school. And my kids went there. I'm drawing a blank on it. Anyway, you know that neighborhood I'm talking about. Little gated neighborhood.
Serrano.
Serrano,
Exactly.
yeah. So, and those houses are what, 20 years old now, something like that.
20. Yep.
All right. If I'm selling a house, I raise my family and I say, all right, my wife wants to move down to Midtown in our empty nester years. And we want to sell this property. We haven't done anything to it in 20 years. It was new 20 years ago, but it needs paint. It needs carpet. The cabinets are worn out in the kitchen and the bathrooms. And, it's basically worn. Does it make sense to remodel the house? What are the bare minimum you would recommend if someone says like, hey, I want to sell this house? What would you kind of recommend as a minimal amount of effort they should put in to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit? And then also how important is a pool and all of that?
So first off, should you do it? The answer is yes. It makes the house more sellable. It's going to make the house more approachable to more buyers. And that's really what it's all about, right? The more buyers you can get your house in front of, the better chance of getting it sold and maybe getting multiple offers in this current market. So yes, anything you can do to freshen up. The bare minimum is always paint, right? Fresh paint makes a ton of difference in a house. And especially if it's 20 years old, it may have dark colors in it and the house may feel dark. And right now, the trend is white and gray and bright and light. So anything you can do to lighten up the house. So that would be, start with paint, carpet, right? Those two things can make a huge difference in a house. From there, it's going to be the kitchen and the master bath are the next two places where you should invest money. Those are the rooms that are going to sell the house quickest. And then depending on budget, go from there into the other bathrooms and light fixtures and what have you. Light fixtures are really inexpensive. They probably could be done the same time as paint and carpet. It doesn't take a lot. Those houses aren't huge. What we're seeing is that the return on that investment is paid out on the sale price, that you will get more than what you put into it out of it. And it will sell more quickly for the reasons we talked about.
Mela, how about a pool?
You know what? Pools have been huge this year because I think going back to COVID and, if you were the place you could go is your backyard, people want to have options. The outdoor living space, not just a pool, but the outdoor living space has become more important than ever before. And improvements out in the yard can also help your home sell faster and for more money. Right now, because of all of the massive growth we have in our area with so much new construction, most pool contractors will come and tell you 9 months, 12 months, 18 months before they can dig your pool. Not to mention the fact the cost of a moderate pool is upwards of 75 to 100,000. Yeah, it's crazy. So people are willing to pay a premium for a pool.
I think we're in the wrong business.
We might be. Yeah, but different than the, at least in my experience, different from the interior remodeling. While the pool will make your home more sellable, no question, the ROI on a pool may not be there, which is why buyers want the pool already in.
Yeah. And then also a lot of times people are just kind of scraping it together to get in the house and they don't have the 75,000 cash to do the pool. Otherwise the money's really expensive to borrow. How about on the high end? Let's take a house, maybe a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot house in the custom area of Serrano. Are you seeing, are most of those properties, do they have pools? I know we're getting a little granular, but do most of those properties have pools, or is it kind of hit and miss? What are you guys seeing?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I would say more than half have pools. I would not say most.
Okay.
I would agree.
But again, if you want to sell it, the pool will make the difference. Whether or not you use it is another question. And so what we see is some folks in that demographic that you would see in Serrano, not to overgeneralize, but people who may be downsizing a little bit, they might be done with a pool.
Right.
They own their next house. They may not want a pool. They had one, didn't use it, paid for it, but the family moving in, they want it.
So even if you don't use it, if you're looking at a property with a pool and you go, I don't want to deal with the pool, it's something to be mindful of, that it helps the property sell faster when you go to sell it. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think the other piece is people moving here, and we talked about this before, people moving here from other areas. One of the things they think about is Sacramento is it's warmer than where they're coming from for
Right.
the most part. And they're coming here because they want to be outdoors. They may be coming here because they have a young family and the schools are good and they need to, readjust their lifestyle that way. But a pool is going to be part of that whole vision that they're bringing with them to this area.
So let's look at average days on the market. Not a lot.
No.
It's really short. Okay. So are you guys doing pre-marketing before it hits the market, like a coming soon? Are you doing that in the capital region, or is that a Bay Area thing?
Well, it's interesting because in the Bay Area, their MLS provides them with the capability of promoting a listing coming soon to other agents. I mean, we'll do coming soon, marketing to our database, on social media, that sort of thing, but you're somewhat limited because we don't have that, quote unquote status in our MLS. But the demand is what drives the days on the market. It's not necessarily really the as I call it, the pre-listing marketing.
This is a crazy low number. This is the average. This is all, just get your head around this. This is every single property in a 3-county area.
Right.
I mean, 2 weeks, average days on the
It's
market.
nuts. If you're a buyer and you're not ready to pull the trigger this weekend, you're likely not going to get the house that you looked at.
Yeah.
And we talked to both our buyers and our sellers about this, that there's kind of different stages that we'll see buyers come in, and you can tell right away that they're still kind of exploring, they're feeling their way around. Then they're ready to make an offer, but they don't really realize yet how aggressive they need to be. And then at some point they reach a threshold, and whether it's, pressure because work and we got to move, or family because we got to move, or schools are starting, or I'm just done with it. They're coming in on that third or fourth one, guns a-blazing, and gosh darn it, I'm buying this house.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And that's the one that comes off this market because they've either missed out on 3 or 4, or, whatever happened, but this is the one, now's the time. And I know if I don't get it this weekend, somebody else is going to get it. So that's why that first weekend on the market is seeing so many sales.
So what should, if I'm someone who's looking to sell a property in the Sacramento, Placer, El Dorado County region, with it such a hot market, I might look at that and go, I can just sell this house myself. I will tell you that and I'm probably sound like a broken record in repeating myself, but the California Association of Realtors has data that says if you list your house on the multiple listing service, you get 13% more for your home. That is just hard data. I'm not going to call people crazy if they don't use a realtor, but I would really, it's a very narrow number of transactions where you wouldn't use a realtor, selling to a tenant where, you're not going to be putting it on the market or whatever, like a lease option to buy where you're kind of finishing up a contract. But in the vast majority of cases, it makes absolute sense to hire a realtor and get the property marketed because you're going to get the highest price. I mean, do you see people trying to kind of work it and say, I want to save on realtor commissions, and do this myself? I mean, does it work or not? I mean, what have you guys
I
seen?
mean, people can definitely sell their home on their own, but you're absolutely right. They're going to get 13%, 10% less. So really, any fees that you pay a realtor, you're going to put more money in your pocket, not to mention the fact that you're going to make sure everything's done right. I mean, I think, I think our role is the role of, we're going to make sure, we do our best to make sure that everything is done properly. And you do all of your due diligence that's necessary for the buyer. And it's a way of protecting yourself. Not to mention, you could sell it on your own, but you'll never really know if you've gotten the best offer. You're not going to have someone, that's negotiating on your behalf that, between John and his team and myself and my team, we've probably done 1,000 transactions. You may have sold one home before in the past.
Right.
So do you want an expert who does that every single day, or you're going to just try and wing it with what is probably your most valuable asset?
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of it. Certainly there is the for sale by owner market out there. It's a small piece of the market. I think most of those folks learn very quickly what they don't know and what they aren't doing. Not all, but a lot of them do. And most for sale by owner listings will eventually end up with a real estate agent.
Interesting.
And, from our experience, as Mela said, most people sell every 7 to 10 years. They really don't have experience selling a property, and they forget what the last one was like. They forget how much work it was just for them as a seller. Forget what the agent is doing. All the things that they need to do to prepare the house, to show the house, to move, all these things where a realtor is going to hold their hand through that entire process. We hear all the time, people say, I had no idea how much work you guys do.
Well,
they think you put a for sale sign out in the yard, people drive up and write a check. And
I will tell you,
thinking.
I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I've done personally several transactions since becoming licensed. I have not done my own deals, so I hire a realtor, because I understand the value. So let's look at months of inventory here. So I think this is a good. And explain what months of inventory means. If Mela, if you could maybe put.
Sure, absolutely. Essentially what that means is, when we look at this chart, if no other homes came on the market, then based upon the pace of sales, that's how much inventory we have as far as supply. So, we've been averaging less than 2 weeks supply. So if no other homes came on the market at any one particular time, we would sell every home that's available for sale within 2 weeks. And, historically, anything above 6 months is a seller's market. And over the last few years, we've been running on average in the 2-month range, maybe at slower times going up to 3 months. But, to have 2 weeks supply is just bananas.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it puts the sellers in the driver's seat.
100%.
Look at last year when we talked about the market ground to a halt, right? So look at March, April, May, and we bounced all the way up almost to 2 months of inventory at that point, right? I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So, for the long, yes, COVID has driven demand up, but even before COVID, supply was short in this region.
Well, and I think, it's perhaps a function of two things. Number one, we're simply not building enough housing units in California.
Right.
It's a fact. Secondly, you have changing demographics. You have people who stop working and they go, okay, I live in Concord, or I live in, Lafayette, and those are nice places to live, but I've really always wanted to live in the mountains, and they move to Tahoe. In fact, we have a question from Anonymous, and maybe you guys can answer this. Do the panelists have experience or comments about Tahoe City's single-family home market dynamics and metrics? Are you guys involved at all in the Tahoe markets?
Yeah, we're members of the North Lake Tahoe Truckee MLS, and we're also, personally involved in that market in addition to professionally. That market, as crazy as we've been here since COVID, that market is completely off the hook. It's nothing I've ever seen. you can get a 1,000 square foot house that hasn't been updated since the 70s for about $700,000 or $800,000. It's not going to have a garage. It might be one bathroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom. It is absolutely crazy what's happened up there. And a lot of that is, take what's happened here in Sacramento and just expand upon it. I mean, how many people have always wanted to live in Tahoe, but because of work, they couldn't live in Tahoe, or they couldn't afford to live in Tahoe, but now they can sell a house in San Mateo or wherever and buy a house up in Tahoe and work remotely. And it's nuts. It's a double-edged sword for sure, because workforce housing up there now is almost non-existent, right? To the point that you cannot, as of 2 weeks ago, you cannot get a short-term rental permit in that end of Placer County, Nevada County.
Mela, any comments on the Tahoe
No,
market?
I completely concur. I am not a member of the board up there, but know a number of agents that are, and I've had clients that sold property up there last year that thought, oh, we're getting top dollar. And since they've sold, their property's gone up. One of my clients specifically sold a house last year up there, and it's gone up $400,000 in a year, which is mind-boggling.
Well, the other thing too is they're living in Tahoe, and I don't think Tahoe is used to having that many full-time residents. I mean, what's going to happen when kids go back to school? Are there enough schools? I mean, I think there are a lot more people there than there were before. Like, traffic's terrible. I mean,
traffic is horrible up there. Everything is so busy. Restaurants, you're waiting outside now to get a table. It's really changed, no question. And it'll be interesting to see what happens longer term too, because there's the idea of living in Tahoe, and then there's the reality of living in Tahoe.
Yeah, right.
And because it has been a transient market for a long time and a rental market, the schools there are good, but they're not great. So either the schools need to improve or people are going to leave. There's going to be people that decide after a winter or 2 or 3 that plowing the driveway and dealing with the winter time is not all it was cracked up to be, or we've done it for a couple of years and that's all I needed and are going to want out. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think it's also dependent on how we work going forward as professionals. I mean, most of the people who have moved up there, I'm assuming they're professionals. They're having a job where they can work remotely, not where they have to be physically proximate. Who knows? Maybe they move out, someone else moves in. I mean, if this is just a new way of working, I mean, maybe this is just a permanent feature and this is not transient where the office is going to blow a whistle and everyone show up, then everyone's going to flee Tahoe. I guess it remains to be seen. We don't know. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and put those in. Subscribe to our YouTube page. And if you'd like to set an appointment with us to talk, you can go ahead and go to our website and check us out. And we'll open it up for questions here. Herberto asks, what's the spillover to adjacent areas? The spillover to adjacent areas, meaning, I guess that would mean who mentioned spillover to adjacent areas? Was that me?
I don't even remember it.
Well, I would think, as John commented very early on, is that I don't know of an area, whether in California, outside of California, on the East Coast, that is not experiencing the greatest real estate market they've ever had. In some areas, demand and activity might not be as high because of just some of, for whatever reason, but the market is hot pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, it's almost like musical chairs. Everyone got to move.
Yes.
And so they did. And so there was just a flurry of activity. And people are living where they want to live. Lola says, excellent. As a Placer County homeowner and landlord, the seminar was very important and helpful. Well, thank you for attending, Lola. And we have another question. Roberto asks, as in next to El Dorado Hills, Sacramento. The spillover, yeah. I mean, I think what's happening, Roberto, is a lot of people they're moving from the Bay Area over to Sacramento, El Dorado Hills. El Dorado Hills people are moving maybe out to Cameron Park, maybe to Idaho. I think we're kind of seeing everyone's like playing leapfrog and moving where they've always wanted to live. And they're no longer constrained in the same way that they were before with work. I mean, look at what we're doing here with Zoom. I don't know that we would have done this on this scale before COVID. I mean, I talk to people in their 90s and their 80s and they're doing Zoom. They figured it out because they need to talk, they need to talk to their doctor and their kids and their grandkids. So we've, as human beings, I think we've collectively figured it out. But I will tell you, it's funny because I was talking to a lawyer. He says when COVID hit, we had no video cameras on our computers and it took him 3 months to get a camera. They were back ordered. He didn't get it till June, right? So.
The other thing I would add on the spillover, we mentioned, we've talked quite a bit about El Dorado Hills and El Dorado County. El Dorado County is more of a slow growth county and development takes a long time to get pushed through in El Dorado County. Whereas in Sacramento County, we're seeing really big development in Sacramento County, all along the 50 corridor, out towards the airport, all the way up, and then you start getting up into the Roseville area, and Roseville has always been kind of a high growth area, as has Elk Grove. So it's going to depend on where you are as far as, where the housing is being built, but the demand is wherever there's a house.
That's amazing. All right. Well, Mela, John, thank you very much for joining us here today. And thank you for joining us or watching us on YouTube. And Lola asks, due to increasing living expenses, inflation, and increasing taxes, if you had wanted to move, what state and city would you all move to in the next 5 years? Interesting. Well, I'm a lifer. I'm staying in California.
I'm right there with you. My kids are here. My grandkids are here. I'm in California.
It depends on where I am in my life. So, me today, yes, I agree actually with Mela and Jim. I think that my wife and I are here for the longer term. If I were younger, I have a son who's going to college out in Golden, Colorado. And I was out there over the weekend. I drove him out back to school and I said to him, I think this is a place Mom and I could live. And he immediately shot us down that we can't do that. But, Colorado doesn't have the tax benefits that some of the other states have, but I could live there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today, Mela and John. It was great to see you guys again. And this will be up on YouTube for those of you watching it who want to look at it again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.